discipline, I would say, and good operational security. They do what they do. They'll do what they need to do, and I believe that a militia is necessary to preserving our constitutional republic. But guess what? With the advent of the internet, this is a unique time in human history where we have the ability to grab pictures. And I want you to speak to this because obviously publishing information on the internet is going to be very, very helpful to those that need to gather intelligence and respond appropriately. But it's not a bad thing to share information and put it up on the internet and let those individuals in the citizens militia, respond to the information that they're getting. Do you agree with that?
Well, certainly we need to use every platform that we can possibly bring to our disposal. And timidity at this point is not going to help anyone. The fact of the matter is that the opposition at the highest levels is already committed. They say there are only 1,000 special forces troops involved in this Jade Helm thing, and they can say that, but then what people don't realize is that the logistical and administrative support troops that are out there, including the combatant troops that can respond to an SF situation, that number is enormous, and that's what we're seeing around the country why there's so much movement. So it is important to use every platform we can. And of course expect that they're going to interdict it at some point in time if our information gets too close to their operations.
There's something very different going on than we normally see. We see the weekend warriors, National Guard troops, they move their stuff around. But one thing that I'm seeing is that there's massive movement coming out of, let's say, Florida up into the Northeast. It's important to identify where these units are coming from, get vehicle markings and stuff like that. But Lieutenant Colonel Potter, do you think that there's something very, very different happening right now with the troop movement that you're seeing out there?
Well, we always expect to have quite a bit of, as you just mentioned, during the summertime. This is when they do their summer camp training and that type of thing, especially in the National Guard, and a lot of joint exercises, of course, and combined exercises are occurring. But what's really different about it this time, of course, is that anybody who has examined this thing, despite what the media continues to try to drum up that we're all a bunch of conspiracy theorists, and yet they cannot address the issues, are the actual facts in the Jade Helm document. And when you watch and see how these movements are occurring, especially in states and in areas that are supposedly conservative in some nature, and with the technological information that they're able to gather, and I'm talking about the military and their interagency partners. Yes, this is different. It's one thing to have an artillery unit move from, say, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, to Fort Hood to practice with another unit there, or to go out on a fire range. But what we're seeing is movements within the United States itself, with the target being, whether or not people realize it, the American citizenry, because of what we talked about before, the psychological warfare that's going on, accepting troops, first of all, and second of all, the fact that they are testing their data to see if what they've been gathering is accurate enough for them to act upon at some future time if they don't do it now. Of course, we're not saying that there's a martial law takeover, but the problem is that you have this type of military and interagency operation going on, which we're seeing everywhere in an unprecedented way. To make it go active is just a matter of a switch of an operations order from an exercise order to an actual operation, and so that literally is a flick of a switch.
All right, now describe, because we have just every single day we're getting brand new listeners. Everyone is coming awake. They know something's very wrong. They're learning about Jade Helm. But describe to our listening audience, especially somebody brand new to this topic, what they should expect to see. Like if they're in Texas, what do special forces, those special operators, what do they look like when they're out mingling in the local population? What do you think they can expect to see?
Well, see, that's the joke, Pete, because they said that they're doing this for overseas deployments. it's no secret for an American to blend in with Americans, especially during the tourism time of year. This is ludicrous. This is absolutely ludicrous. So what will we expect to see on the special operations people?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's hard to say. And I can't say because explain this to people. I think I'll just go ahead and say this because I think I mentioned this before. About 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, they were already on me. And I know people say, "Oh, come on." I'm not saying they were going to do anything about it, but they're checking their data, and I think they did the same thing to you. And I know some other people that have had the same occurrence. So what you're going to see probably is people blended into they're not going to stand out at all, except for the fact that if they're in a small town, people won't recognize them. There'll be somebody new. But again, this is the tourism time. So, I find it distressing, and I don't even know if I can describe to you what to look for because it's almost at this point you have to have counterintelligence on them prior to this. I think you heard just here the other day that the news media has been prevented from having embedded reporters, and the excuse is, well, we have to protect the identification or the identities of these special forces operatives. Oh, really? Okay, I get it. Right. I'm sorry, that's not it. It's because the news media, even though they're complicit with the propaganda organ of the state, I mean the United States government and the rogue agencies underneath it, and a part of it, the fact of the matter is who they're really worried about identifying aren't the regular special forces people. It's the type of people that set off the Boston bombing, that were involved in 9/11. That's who they're worried about identifying. These black operatives, they answer to nobody but the dollar and power.
So you think that's why they do not want media embedded, because they want to protect the black ops, not just your regular run-of-the-mill enlisted personnel.
No, special forces is no big secret. I mean, everybody usually knows somebody in SF or SEALs or whatever. No, that's not what's going on here. And what did we hear here how long ago? All this data that was stolen from the Federal Office of Personnel Management, including military records. And if it was a foreign country that they're trying to keep that information from, are you kidding me? I mean, come on. Classifications are not designed, in particular, they're not designed necessarily, I should say, to keep information from a foreign enemy. 90% of the time, if not more, it's to keep information from citizens so that they cannot react to trying to hold their government accountable. That's what it's for, and we've seen an increase in this in the last few years. I was involved in an early false flag back in the 1970s. And the CIA got involved in that when I discussed it on the internet to some extent, and tried to make it sound like I caused this false flag. I was a first lieutenant at the time. This was their effort at disinformation and defamation. When in fact anybody could go into the news media and read what happened there. There was a hoax bomb put in by a contractor to try to cause a problem for some security police, federal security police. It was discovered, and we actually investigated, arrested the guy that was involved, and I ended up having to testify basically against the government as an Army officer, which was a very difficult thing, and against the guy who made the Brigadier General list. And so I had very early on experience dealing with these people, and they covered up. And again, as you know, I mean, they turned that into a drill and then tried to make it into a real deal. They wanted to fool the news media and make them feel like it was a real deal. So, no, I can see this stuff 1,000 miles away, and it's not for training against foreign enemies. There is a possibility, if I can interject real quick, we do have Russian Spetsnaz and intelligence people, operatives here now. But how could we? I mean, we always have. But I doubt not that there are special units here now that if a war kicks off, just like they're sending nuclear, the bear bombers around our perimeter, I doubt not that there are Russians here. But this whole Jade Helm is pointed at the American conservative. It's pointed at veterans. It's pointed at anybody who does not believe that the federal government is representative of a constitutional republic and the American people. That's what it's pointed at.
Stay right there. When we come back, okay, for instance, the media being embedded with these special forces troops. They don't want the media to disclose what they're actually doing out there. When we come back, let's talk about what they want to conceal. I mean, what are these special forces guys or these black ops guys doing out there that they don't want to disclose to the American public? Roy, stay right there, okay? We're gonna come back and talk about that right after the short break, ladies and gentlemen. Lieutenant Colonel
Jacob Boskov dreamed up the most sinister weapon he could think of. Then he built a prototype and tried to sell it in an international weapons trade show. The results were surprising. I'm Dr. Cal.
Do these special forces guys or the black operative guys, what are they doing out there? Let's say they're in a local community in a small town. What do they want to conceal? What are they doing? And I'm trying to give everyone an idea of what they should be looking for. Snooping around looking for what? What are they doing?
Well, they've already actually started, Pete. Part of it is winning the hearts and minds. That's one of the first things that Special Forces does when it goes out in an operational environment to prepare for conventional forces to come in, is to soften the hearts and minds of people, to find out who they can get on their side, who's with the program and who isn't. So, in other words, they've already started that with this Mark Listoria and this Meade guy and all of these other things that have been going on in the media to try to prep the people to accept this. That's really the first stage of it, is that particular thing there. The next stage is what is Jade Helm about? And I think that you have exposed that along with John B. Wells and some other people that have done an excellent job in looking into this, that they've got this technological asset. It's an AI system, as you mentioned, and then with the information data mining of Palantir, what they need to do is they need to test it in an operational environment. Now, I'm certain that they've already done that to some extent in Iraq and Afghanistan, but people misunderstand that the testing there was to eventually bring it to the United States. That's the problem. And so what they have here is an extensive information data collection that's been going on for years, much more sophisticated than has been in any foreign country. But what they learned about using it in a place where it's sort of like Jim Ryan, who was running in the Olympics, back in, I think it was the 60s or 70s. He went to Mexico City to lower his oxygen, so he trained his body to do things without oxygen, and then he also used a respirator to reduce it even more. So in other words, can he operate in that environment even with less information? And that was the deal that they did in Afghanistan and Iraq. But now they're in an to use the metaphor, they are now in an oxygen-rich environment, in an information-rich environment, and it'll be much easier for them to conduct the operations. But they do want to test it first, and as I said, what they'll be doing is out there. They'll be checking. Let's just say Pete Santilli. Okay. Well, and we talked about this on a show not too long ago. Is our data correct on Pete Santilli? Are we going to be able to find him at such and such a location at such and such a time? Is he eating this for dinner? Is he with this person or that person? What's he doing? Is the data correct? And who are the associates that he is dealing with? Are they involved in counter, and I don't say anti-government, that's not it. I don't think any of the people who are worried about Jade Helm in the sense of the Constitution are anti-government. What they are is they're against unconstitutional thuggery in the government, and it is in the military, and so the black ops people, especially, I'm not saying your Joe down the street to join the military, and is in there, although he will follow orders because he probably isn't really trained well enough or have enough experience to know what's going on. But these black ops people, they're going to be testing if they can do, for instance, extractions, if they can do manipulations of local governments and corporations, and I think we've seen that already. If they can get things ready, I don't think you're actually going to see practice drills of extracting anybody. I don't think that's going to go on because they don't want people to know that that's what they're up to. They did it in Florida, and what did that do? You know, that one exercise they had in Florida, and I mean, that thing went on through the internet like crazy. So I think it's just basically to test their data at this point, unless the China situation, the New York Stock Exchange situation, the Greece situation, the forced inoculations going on in California, Texas asking for its gold back, you know, all of these things that are happening around to counter what the federal government has been doing. If they now consider that to be at a flashpoint where they have to act or lose their advantage, they'll do it. And that's the danger that I've been pointing out the entire time, in which case you will find people that are no longer in their homes when a neighbor comes to check on them. So watching out for strangers. I think there was somebody in Texas there, as I recall here about 2 months ago, that found some guys on their property dressed as local utility people, electrical folks from the electric department or whatever. Chances are there'll be, you know, more of that too. So it's really hard to explain to the public what to look for because it's almost a counterintelligence type of training that you need to have to deal with it. But I think those are kind of the highlights.
You know, and one thing that I want to point out, Chris Ann Hall on her show this past week, she scoffed at the fact that that these establishment people are demonizing patriots, okay, who are concerned about the unconstitutional police state, the government, and referring to us as being anti-government because we oppose what they've actually done and overrun our constitutional republic. Our nation was founded by our founding fathers being anti-government. They were against the British. The entire reason why we were founded was because...
To define it, that wasn't actually anti-government. That was anti-tyranny.
Right.
You know, it's one thing... I mean, I think the founding fathers proved that they were about good government. I mean, whether or not people think that they had their own self-interest involved, well, of course they did. They wanted to protect their fortunes and their families, which a lot of them ended up losing anyway, and people forget to talk about that. You know, these people that claimed that they were slave owners and that they were you know, nasty capitalists. They were just trying to take advantage of everybody. Hey, they leveled the playing field like it had never been done before. And so they weren't anti-government. They were for, I will say they were for good government, representative government of the people, for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they were against, certainly, thuggery in government. And we see that now with, you know, I mean, how is it that we have these fusion centers that feed information to supposed law enforcement officers, federal or otherwise, who are sworn to uphold and protect the Constitution, and they get parallel construction and then lie in the courts under oath that they got the evidence in a proper and legal fashion. They lie about it. They prove every day that they cannot be trusted. Yeah. So that's not anti-government. That's holding government accountable. That's right. Against thuggery and mobbery in government.
That's right. You know what? I'm going to do this. In the Declaration of Independence, it's part and parcel, you know, as part of the, you know, within the U.S. constitutional books that everybody carries around, at least the patriots do. I need to read this, okay? I'm going to read it again. The Declaration of Independence, this one very important paragraph. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect the safety and happiness, their safety and happiness, We have a right. We have an obligation. It is very, very clear that our unalienable rights, there's no doubt about it, have been trampled. Everyone is starting to recognize this. Even people that aren't quote-unquote conspiracy theorists, regular run-of-the-mill Joes, are starting to wake up to this. Our rights are being stripped. There's no longer a recognition of the consent of the governed. They have just trampled all over us. Now, I'll give you an example of this. We talked about Obamacare yesterday. We sent Republicans to Washington, D.C. With the mandate to do two things: stop illegal immigration and to repeal Obamacare. We voted them. We actually cast our ballots to send the Republicans to Washington, D.C. to do that. And they did the exact opposite. That is not running our government and giving them power from the consent of the governed, is it?
Not at all. And I think that's an important point that you've made, Pete, and you've said it eloquently. That's exactly right. The government is totally unlawful in almost everything that they do. And again, it's not being anti-government to show that this criminality exists there. Mm-hmm. So pointing it out is, sort of our first step in saying, okay, if you're not going to fix this and the ballot box isn't going to convince you to fix it, then where are you going to take us from there? And, July 4th just passed. I don't ever want to see something like that happen on a mass scale here in the country at this point in time, but they're the ones that are engineering it, not the people.
Yeah. Now, the regular, and I call them just a regular average Joe, understands what's happening to them. That even people that don't follow the news, even the Xbox generation that's just been immersed in their normal life, they're starting to recognize that their rights are being stripped away. That the government that we're referring to, that we, like myself, if I'm anti anything, I'm anti a corrupt government. And everyone's recognizing that there are a bunch of corrupt multimillionaires that couldn't care less about the freaking slaves. Now, let's transition to this. We've had a discussion recently with Charlotte Iserbyt. She flat out calls it implementation of communism from the education system, the political system. Do you think that we have melded into a communist form of government, the way they're running it? Is it communist?
Oh, wow. I mean, I don't know actually what to call it, Pete. I personally think that it's a lot closer to a fascist dictatorship, which is just as dangerous to me as a communist one, if not more so. I don't follow that particular philosophy of the left-right paradigm that communism is great and that communism is on the one side and democracy on the other. I look at it as freedom or anarchy is the far right, and totalitarianism, tyranny is on the far left. Regardless of how it's implemented, the results are the same. And so what I see here right now is of course, corporations are now controlling governments. Governments are not protecting us from these illegal acts by corporations and, in fact, are complicit with them. And so that, to me, sounds more like fascism. But I think the bottom line is, if your rights are being violated by government or by corporations, then regardless of what system that they are trying to use to bring that about, the government and those corporations are becoming the enemy of the people, who are in fact the true government of the country, or at least that's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay, so regardless of how, and you and I have had these discussions before, we've been disappointed because the boiling frog syndrome. Okay, we've got a bunch of frogs in the pot, and they're just sitting there, and they're not doing anything. But all of a sudden, the frogs are starting to wake up. I think they are. Let's talk about this. Let's give everyone, marching orders, regardless of how disgusted we are with American society. Okay? What does everyone need to do? Everyone must do this to save our country. What do you think everyone needs to do right now?
Well, again, Pete, I'll mention some things right now, but I hope you do understand that I think it's already gone too far. I don't think it's salvageable. I'm going to just say that up front. The American people have been too dumbed down, too interested in sports, too interested in entertainment, and we're beyond the point of no return. And that's my personal feeling. But what can we do? We can uphold in our own lives the principles of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and above all, spirituality, looking for God, however you define Him, or it. I don't really care at this point how people do it, because if they're true in their hearts, what the truth is about that will finally be manifest to them. So all I ask is that they look for that supreme power and the good side, not the bad. That's the first thing. The second is that you must prepare physically for yourself and your own family and friends. You've got to get the food, the water, the medical supplies, the things that you need to survive at least for a couple of months when this thing comes down. The third thing that you need to do, and I would include ammunition as well.
Hold that thought, okay? Because you just mentioned, and it's preparation. Now, we've been talking about preparation for decades now, okay? Is it time right now? Every single person needs to know it is coming down. Is there 100% certainty something big is going to happen? And if you're not preparing, you're going to be screwing your family. Is that true?
Absolutely. I mean, it's in the elite's white papers and in the plans of UNESCO and all these other things, how this thing will come about. The timing on it, I don't know, but all the signs are converging at this point right now. And don't forget, Pete, you can shut off the faucet. All right. In other words, you can stop everything, and things will still go along as if everything's okay for probably 30 to 60 days, and then all of a sudden things will dry up. It'll be sudden in that regard. Even if people have lost their jobs, it'll appear to them that things will go along for a little bit longer time. When in fact, the sand in the bottle is emptying out.
One final preparatory
situation right now.
One final thing, and that's all we have time for this segment. And I thank you for joining us. One final thing that everyone needs: spiritually, get yourself in order. Prepare. One more item.
One more item. Be prepared to stand against the evil, to protect your life, your loved ones, and the things that you hold dear.
Yes, sir.
It will come down to that.
Yes, sir. Lieutenant Colonel Roy Potter, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen.